Hello and welcome to another SonicLAB. It's been a little while, but that's because I've been on holiday. And as such, I'm a little late to the party because what I have here is the Moog Mavis. And this is an analog synthesizer kit. In fact, what happened is it got slightly delayed in customs. So I didn't get to get it into the office until just before I went on holiday. So I missed the deadline, but it means I can maybe spend a little bit more time with it. So the Moog Mavis analog synthesizer kit, as usual with lots of Moog stuff, comes with really nice packaging. They do seem to get their packaging right. We've got our front panel, then we've got what looks like the case, which has got a little deck saver type top to it. Nice touch. Then we've got the main PCB. Well, essentially, I think pretty much this is the entire synth. So all we're probably going to have to do is stick the knobs on, screw the knurly bits on and stick it in the case. That's pretty much going to be it. Got a few patch cords, all the usual paperwork. Looks like a calibration screw. What else have we got? Oh yeah, here's all the nuts and bolts. I'll put it together and then I can spend a bit of time with it. But this is sort of initial stage. But first impressions, yeah, it looks fairly basic. It doesn't look like we're going to have to spend too much time putting it together. If you were watching our recent Gearfest coverage, you'll see that I spoke to Tom at Source, who is the UK distributor of Moog, beg your pardon, and he gave us a kind of brief overview of the Mavis. Do check that out. Okay, right, I'll get on with that now. One thing I will say that's kind of handy, there is a spare screw thing, and also but there is a little plastic kind of LED tube, so there'll be an LED under here, and I lost that, but there was a spare one, which I think I just dropped on the floor. So you do get a little bit of redundancy in there. Okay, so I've built this up. I haven't screwed this in. Like I say, it took about 8 or 9 minutes, so Tom was absolutely bang on for that. Essentially, this is the version that comes in the case, but it is possible to mount this in Eurorack. If I take this out here, you can see on the edge connector there is a block. This is a 10-pin header. I did have a spare cable around, but it's of a slightly different type. So unfortunately, Moog didn't supply that cable with it, so I can't plug this in and try it in a rack, but that's a bit stingy actually. I think I would have liked to have seen that. So let's plug the power in. This comes included. And then we'll take the left right out. Incidentally, this auto senses, so it'll either sense to a headphone output or just a straight VCA output. Plug that in there. So now what I'll do is I'll just plug in my pitch CV. There is no MIDI here. Incidentally, it does come with a little pack of patch cables. It also comes with a little set of overlays. These are from Lisa Belladonna's Mavis cookbook, so some good patches there. I know DivKid does a few of those. Not a blank one though. Would have liked to seen a blank one because then we could photocopy it and use it for our own patches. But hey, as if by magic, I've changed. It's very hot here at the moment. Our air conditioning can't cope with the amount of heat that's coming down. We're in a British heat wave, but I will endeavour to do my best. Okay, so coming back to the front panel here, we've got 2 oscillators, effectively. One's called an LFO, but it is actually an oscillator as well. VCO 1, if I just play, this is sawtooth. It's a decent sound. And we've got pulse width, which has got a lovely tear to it. Incidentally, the scaling, if I bring this little tuner in, we'll be able to kind of get, I've got this about, so that's my C reference point. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, that's about as good as I can get it. It's quite hard to get accurate tuning on these little knobs, but you know, that's just a space issue. So that's about as good as I can get. So if I now go up, you can see I'm actually quite far up, out there, but that's where this little thing comes here. If I just drop this into the I'll drop it down a tiny bit because that's roughly what I was at the low C. So now that's my keyboard scaling effectively. So pretty damn good actually. I think you'll agree. I mean, that scaling's good and it's easily adjustable. So no worries there. I don't know what that must have been, 5 or 6 octaves. So we've got that. So let's go back to the main screen. We can mix the modulation of the pitch and the PWM amount between the EG and the LFO. If we just go to LFO, Whoops. And obviously the LFO can go between triangle and square. That's pretty nice, isn't it? Dare I say it, it has a mighty fine PWM wave. Jolly good, that's all nice. But it doesn't stop there, because the sort of super, we'll get onto the wave folder and stuff later, but the LFO will also double as another VCO. So let's patch that up so that we can play both of these as VCOs from the same keyboard input. So I'm splitting the pitch here. This is coming in from the main keyboard, and then I'm coming out of a stackable, and I'm controlling the LFO pitch as well, which is just useful. So we'll come out of the LFO and into input 1 of the 2-channel mixer, because we've got 1, 2, output 1 and 2. It's just a nice little utility mixer, and we get control over level 1 via this knob. Then we're going to come out of the LFO and we'll go in to the attenuator, which is this guy here. Then we'll come out of the attenuator and we'll go into input 2. That means we've got basically level control over each oscillator individually. Then we come out of the mixer and we go into the fold. Now this is the new thing. The wave folder is new for Moog. At the moment we won't use any wave folding. We're just going to basically keep these two things down, and it allows us right, you can see as I'm playing the keyboard, that's changing. So I need to now figure out, so I've got my, let's just bring this into, I've tuned this up, so let's now try and get this into roughly the same. So da la 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 la. So now I've got both my oscillators. This is this VCO, and this is this as a VCO. So it'd be interesting to see what the tuning is like. So we go to square. Yeah, not so good. The tracking on the LFO as a VCO is not as accurate as it is. You can get probably a couple of octaves, so you'll have to finagle around, but you can, you know, essentially get 2 oscillators out of it, albeit with 1 slightly less. But that does bring us on to the notion of the wave folder, which is this kind of unique part. So we'll start just with the VCO into the wave folder. So now I can turn the wave folder up with this. Oops. So now with the wave folder, what the wave folder does, for those of you who don't know and haven't watched any of the other reviews, essentially if we've got this much level and a waveform is going into, that's the top point, as it gets, a wave folder basically just takes that wave and sort of folds it down. So you get these kind of strange, well, they're like Batman type waveforms if you're using a triangle, and various different shapes. Works on some better than others. So for instance, this one, this is a sawtooth wave. Square wave, not so much. Sorry, it's quite hard to sort of see what I'm doing while but you do get an interesting kind of clipping sound. Right, now we take that out. Now if we go over to a triangle wave folds much better. So let's go. Harmonics out of a triangle wave, and we bring them up. But there are other tricks to this as well. So if we take the let's take the LFO rate out. So now we're just going to have that as an LFO, and we add these together. So let's go with a sawtooth into the wave folder, and we bring the LFO in, which is going to be sub audio rate. Get some really interesting. Interesting harmonic changes just by blending between the wave on the one input and then also an LFO wave. bring the filter in. Nice. Okay, so we've moved things on along the pace, but this is kind of the superpower of the Mavis. The wave folder, even though we don't have actual CV control of the wave folder, it is possible to adjust how much wave folding goes on, either by the knob or by the amount of signal you put into it. I mean, you can do it by patching on this, although to be honest, it's easier if you've got some external VCA control, because then that will give you a little bit more finesse and ability, so you could run an envelope and have kind of tones like that. But it does bring a sort of new flavour of sound into a really quite affordable Moog. So coming back here, I guess it's time, if we take the folder out, folder is normalised into the VCF. So as is normal, we'll take this down. This is the classic, well, not even quite a sawtooth. You can hear that kind of little smudge there, and then because this is a ladder filter, 24 dB ladder filter, we bring in some resonance. You can hear that low end drops away quite dramatically. And we can drive a certain amount less into the filter via an attenuator. And yeah, it is possible to run this. We can actually drive this in full resonance. So if I take that out, and then take my CV into, you can't really see this, but there's a bit of a nest. So if I take my CV into cutoff, let's take the envelope out. Not really terribly tracky, maybe an octave. Yeah, an octave, but you can play the filter as well. So I suppose that covers most of those, the basic building blocks. We've also got a VCF mod amount. One thing that's kind of cool about these as well is we've got these kind of bidirectional modulation amounts. So we can actually have just the LFO or just the envelope generator or a mixture of both. So we can create some quite, if I bring, so let's bring, I've got my envelope giving that initial twang, and then the VCO, the LFO via the kind of split halfway via this split modulation routing. Kind of cool. VCA mode's got a drone, also useful. And we can get pretty high up here. So if we now we go audio rate LFO. If we actually retrack the LFO, we can get some quite high audio rate, because if we put CV into the rate control, we can get a little bit higher than the knob. We can get that talking filter. Let's put a little bit of my Zoom multi-effects on that. Turn it into a square modulation. We can get that talking filter thing. Couple of things. Keyboard scale, well, while interesting, doesn't work on the CV input, but if we were to, we can change the keyboard scaling. So that's like, which would be useful if we were playing this via the keyboard. And same with the glide. We've got, the glide. But again, unfortunately, the glide doesn't work on the external CV input. So those two controls are only really useful if you happen to want to play it via this 1-octave spongy keyboard, which probably is quite an edge case scenario, I think. I mean, obviously, if you're on a bus and you've got the battery pack, yeah, you might do, but yeah, I'm not sure quite why. In fact, if I come back to this keyboard, I'm not quite sure why this is here totally. I mean, if they could have, you know, instead of the keyboard, had another envelope, or, you know, that might have been a little more enticing for a synthesist. But I guess, you know, this is really aimed at a kind of getting a Moog flavour in your life with a wave folder, which has a little bit of a different, unique character, and all that. I suppose that's all I can say. So I think what I'll do now is, rather than just kind of keep going through these features, I mean, that pretty much covers a lot of the stuff. I'm going to just create a few patches and explain what's going on, because it's quite versatile. You know, the simplicity of this synth is misleading if you think it'll only do X or Y. It actually does quite a lot of things, and there are some great examples from DivKid and Loop Pop and lots of other people out there who kind of like take this simplicity and kind of go, well, look, why don't you try some of these things? And it sort of encourages you, like the other Moog semi-modular stuff and Moog modular stuff, to kind of really dig into what you can do with a simple synthesizer, but with those sort of patching points and those basic building blocks. Right, here's another little patch, which I'm going to be using the key step. I'm sort of mixed it up a little bit. What I've actually got is the sequence 1, which is basically using something that I have mentioned before, which is the sample and hold circuit. So sample and hold is playing a little sequence off the Arturia, and I'm bringing the sample and hold output into the cutoff frequency, but I'm clocking that from the drum output of sequence 1, so I can change. Let's have a look. I should be able to change the rate. So it's got its own set. It'll either be driven off the LFO or an external. And I'm doing it on eighths. So back to the main. Then I'm bringing in got a second sequence. If I unplug the oscillator. So that is basically playing the LFO. Which I can play a little bit through the wave folder, and put the LFO, the oscillator back in. So I just wanted to introduce the concept of sample and hold, which I have here, which is the thing I hadn't mentioned yet. So now we've covered the sample and hold, which is good. And then we can tinker with stuff like modulating from the audio rate of this in various different amounts. Modulate the pulse width harder. We'll come back to it. Then bring the wave folder in a bit, which will work harder on the triangle wave. Anyway, that's yet another little example using the sample and hold, which I hadn't mentioned previously. Here's a nice one. Bring that into a bit of pulse width. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing both of these into the folder. I'm not using any folder at the moment. Adding some LFO. Well, I'm using the mod wheel. Sort of dirties it up a bit. LFO and the oscillator into the folder creates a different tonality. I'm using the mod wheel to pitch bend, to open the filter, and also to speed up the LFO. You can see there as I move it, the LFO is changing speed. And if we go to square wave, interesting, the folder changes, but I'm using a bit of pulse width modulation as well. And a bit of negative envelope with a bit of LFO on the filter. Just that interesting, what happens in the wave folder if I take that down. It's kind of an interesting anyway, get lost in that for ages, couldn't you? We've got two channels coming out of the sequencer here. One is playing one note and one is playing another. This one is playing the main VCO and this is playing the LFO. So if I come here and I press play, I've got that one, and then I've also got pitch bend again, mod wheel opening the filter. So now if I just go back to, I've got basically the oscillators are coming in. That's on the one level, which is the mixer that we've got. That's a little handy utility. And then we've got an attenuator. So I've got level control of both. And then I'm just bringing in the LFO, which is audio rate mod. I can bring a bit of folding. Doing a bit of transposing on the sequence. Nice. Again, you know, nice little duophonic patch. Yes, there's quite a lot of patching going on, but literally I'm only using this, the effects, and then the sequencer in here. There's no other modules going on. So I'm just really trying to demonstrate what kind of stuff you can get out of this. So what do I think? Well, undoubtedly and inevitably, there's always a premium to pay for Moog stuff. It does cost a little more. I mean, that's just the way they do things because they manufacture and all that stuff's based in the US. But it has that certain cachet, and there's definitely that ladder filter going on, and the oscillators do sound really nice. Yeah, you could probably spend 320 quid on something else, maybe beginning with B, that would give you more stuff, and that would be fine too. But I'm glad this exists, and certainly if you want to get some Moog in your life, 320 quid is actually not a bad entry point. And like I say, you can start getting into it. The only thing I will say, you're going to have to watch out, because it's quite possible you bring this in and you're down the slippery slope to modular, and then 6 weeks later you've sold all your belongings and you've got a massive case. Anyway, I'm joking, but it's a gateway to modular as well if you haven't already got some. But having said that, if you have already got some, you can get this in a case and it'll work. You just need that header cable, which I'm ashamed they didn't actually include that in the main box. Anyway, that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. That was the Moog Mavis monophonic or sort of duophonic desktop synth.